It really is.
Yep.
And for someone like
And I'm totally.
and
Go
for
ahead.
someone like me, I have to deal with bandwidth caps. So I have to weigh out what footage I'm gonna process and upload versus what is not even going to be economically feasible to a great extent. I have to play the economics card quite often doing Bunny Boots Inc., where I got to weigh out, is this going to be worthwhile to put up versus the other, because internet's not cheap where I'm at. So
Mm.
Oh yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Something else too. Since we were discussing, heck, hold on one second, my dog. You guys have to talk for a second.
oh, that's not too.
So
Go ahead.
how much interaction do you get, Funny Boots, with the? Because you live out in a pretty rural area, don't you?
Yes, for the most part. Actually, I'm several miles away from the closest town. So,
So how much interaction? Like, do you have to go looking for cops to interact with them,
um,
or do they? They probably know you by now. Huh?
well, they know about me to some extent, but because I do sort of like sort of like I'll go and film a few places in a day and then not come back. I'll not show back up for another month. I generally get forgotten about. But I am
Gotcha.
on a few bolos or security briefs, that's for sure, with Department of Homeland Security and some of the security offices in the local area. But
Nice. That's cool. Is there a lot? Is there a lot of federal facilities and stuff
uh, for the
out
most
out by
for the
you?
most part, I have filmed almost all of them. There's only a handful of them I haven't filmed and done videos about. That I'm probably gonna follow up on within my reach in this general area that I'm in for the Matsu Valley and Anchorage area. Pretty much for the most part, if I'm really wanting to hit anything that's outside of that, I gotta spend at least 4 hours driving in a one general direction to be able to go and film the next either federal or major commercial facility that hasn't been touched or dealt with.
Dang. That's crazy because I live in Portland, which is a major city, and there's I don't even know how many opportunities there are within 20 minutes of where I live. That is just it's crazy. Like 4 hours driving is like I don't know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds
Yeah,
of stuff within my area of that in that range. It's crazy.
and I pointed this out to a few people that I've talked with in the past. The borough that I live in, the actual size of the area is it's got the same square miles as what the state of West Virginia, and yeah, it is huge. And we only have approximately, I think, about 50, at most 20 to 50,000 people that live in this borough, and a majority of them live
Oh,
close to the city of Anchorage for the most part. And I do make routine trips going into the city of Anchorage to do filming. I've done filming in the city of Palmer. I might do some filming in the city of Wasilla at some point. I know there's the city of Houston up here. We have a small town called Houston. I might do some filming over there, but I don't really expect much out of a town with a population of, I think, just under 2,000.
right.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
can you like tell us how do you what's your strategy when you find a location you're like, hey, I want to go do something with that. What do you like scout it out, or do you just look up something on the internet, be like, that place, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna do something? What's your thought process? What's your game plan?
Well, in general, what I prefer doing is get a general idea what I'm dealing with location wise. I'll sit there, do research about property bound. If I have the time, I'll do research about property boundaries. Is there a Google Street View that I can take a look at and get an idea what I'm going to be seeing? Where can I walk safely? Where am I going to be able to walk around at? Where can I park? Um, Look at aerial footage to see is there anything that's going to be worthwhile. If I'm going to go out there and drone the facility, what are the aeronautical maps saying? Is there controlled airspace in that general area? Is there any temporary flight restrictions that are going to be imposed or are imposed in that spot? I generally try to do a lot of research beforehand. When I did the Texas trip, a lot of the stuff that I ended up doing was more or less impromptu, in which case there was almost minimal to no scouting except for a couple locations like the NSA facility where I flew the drone at. I actually did some research on that location just to make sure I would be okay for droning. Same with the FBI building that I did in that area. For the most part, was I wanted to make sure that I'm going to be legal for the most part on what I know and what I can find within the ordinances, state laws, or FAA regulations if I do UAS operations.
Nice. So do you just like Google search the FAA laws and stuff like that, or do you have like a specific site that you'll go to and?
Well, I have,
because I've always been curious about how do you figure that out?
Well, for the for controlled airspace stuff, I have two websites that I go to for looking up aeronautical maps on controlled airspace. The one I can remember off the top of my head is SkyVector, which literally is just a copy of all the FAA aeronautical maps. And you can use that. It's the FAA ones are very crappy to look at for the most part if you're trying to look for a specific street or whatever where the that line ends at. But it does a good emphasis on giving you an idea if you're going to be close to any kind of controlled airspace where you're either going to have to get permission from an air traffic controller or at least notify the airport manager of that airport in that area saying, hey, I'm going to be flying in this area. Because there's places where you have controlled airspace, but they don't really have an air traffic controller monitoring that airspace.
Gotcha. Dang. So adding a drone to your work, like that in itself adds a lot of work that you have to do, doesn't it? That's crazy. I never thought about that.
Yeah. In fact, actually, they just did a new round of changes on the certifications that you're supposed to get in order to fly as a hobbyist or commercial. I, for the most part, fly generally just as a hobbyist due to the fact that I'm not making an active business out of it. I'm just using it to augment what I do for BBI for the most part. But I will also just fly around and goof off with family and friends and all that stuff, going, hey, check this out, and go fly up on a mountain or something like that in a state park or national park if you know the right people. You can sort of get away with that, but don't do it in the major national parks. They actually got a blanket ban for flying drones in those parts. But
really, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, the problem was the main reason why they did that though with the national parks drone ban was due to the fact that people were apparently harassing wildlife with the drones. And so they do have a legitimate reason. But here's the trick though. They can only ban you taking off and landing in the national parks. If you're sitting outside the national park and you fly the drone in above the thing and get some shots or whatever and fly back, they can't do anything about that because airspace is FAA and NTSB's jurisdiction, not the national parks, the Bureau of Land Management. That's not they just deal with the land, the stuff that's on the land, the trees and all that stuff. They don't control the airspace. But they can punish you for taking off and landing. For the most part. And this is, of course, from my understanding of what I'm seeing on how the jurisdictions play out for the most part. That's why I like the ordinance for doing trespassing and stuff like that, or cities passing ordinances where you can't fly under a certain amount of feet in the city's area is not valid because it bumps with FAA and NTSB's jurisdiction over control of the skies, which is considered public access, like a sidewalk or a street.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's something I've been wanting to go and make a video about. I just haven't had the time to sit down because there's a lot of stuff that I got to go back and review. And every single time I go back and review stuff, the FAA or the NTSB has put out some sort of new memorandum, and that adds on another 40 to 50 hours of reading through paperwork to see how does this affect? Well, what does this affect? How does it apply and all that stuff? And so I haven't had the chance to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make a video. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have to go and change my entire script for this because they put out this change in this last couple of months.
Right. what is that? The longer acronym? What does that stand for?
National Transportation Safety Bureau is NTSB, and they
Okay, got,
sort of they're the ones that actually send out the investigators when there's an aircraft that crashes or something like that. In fact, actually, small aircraft crash quite often up here in Alaska. And so, yeah, it's always fun to read the NTSB reports after the crash happens and they finish up their investigation. I'm actually still waiting for the release for the last two that I know about, where we had one aircraft at the Palmer airport, where it somehow ended up on its back during on its upside down and on the ground at the airport. Now I'm not sure if it happened while it was landing or it was taking off,